Hi, this is Dr. Bhavna Pandey, Assistant Professor from School of Management, Babu Banarsi Das University, Lucknow. My today's lecture is titled Values in Organizational Behavior. So, what are values? Values represent basic convictions that a specific mode of conduct or end state of existence is personally or socially preferable to an opposite or converse mode of conduct or end state of existence. So, value, it is a conception and it may be explicit or implicit. Explicit meaning it can be seen, it is visible, and implicit can be in your mind, it is not revealed by your actions. Then it is a basic belief that the person believes that this particular mode of conduct is preferably better than the opposite mode of conduct or end state of existence. So simply put, it is your belief that what you are doing is better than the other way of doing it. So values in a way, if the individual internalizes values, it becomes a sort of a standard for guiding your actions and for selecting a particular action, and it helps you to make your choices depending on your values. So values, they are stable, they are fairly consistent over a period of time, but they can be developed not by lectures or sermons, but through role modeling or by open examination of what you are what you are practicing and what you actually desire. So they are evaluative beliefs, they are judgments or choices that guide our preferences for outcomes in a variety of situations. So values, they guide us in different stages of our life in making choices over what is right and what is wrong. Values have both content and intensity attribute. Content meaning what you value, that is, an individual may value freedom or pleasure over other things, or happiness, equality, and others. Intensity means how important it is, how important the value is for the individual or for the group or community. So, intensity attribute relates to the importance that the person places on the value. Value systems now values are not they do not act singly. They many values, they interact with each other, and that helps to form the value system. And a person's an individual again may practice three four values, and he may place some values on top of the list that are more important to him, and that he may be displaying in his actions and behaviors more often than the other values. Then these values, they are established in early years of our life, and they are molded by our parents, teachers, friends, and others. So values do have importance. They help us in understanding the world around us. They help us in understanding the attitudes, motivation, and behaviors of individuals and cultures. So they help us to understand ourselves as well as the uh, behaviors of others, why people show certain attitude, why what motivates them, or why they behave the way the way they do, and why people from different cultures value different things. So they help us to perceive the world around us, and they help us to interpret what is right for us and what is wrong for us. And so they help us to make these judgments, and imply that some behaviors or outcomes are preferred over others, right? So they are functions of preferences, and they sort of guide us in our behaviors, in our actions. Then values can be societal values, they can be organizational values or individual values. Now, as I said, values, they don't act singly. There are different values that interact with each other, and that what's helped to make up the value system. And many psychologists have proposed such value frameworks, and one of them is Rocky's value framework. So, according to Rocky's, the values are, he divided them into two general categories of terminal values and instrumental values. Terminal values are desirable end states of existence, that is, the goals that a person would like to achieve during his or her lifetime. And instrumental values are preferable modes of behavior or means of achieving one's terminal values. So, terminal values is what the person desires to achieve, and instrumental values help to achieve those desired things. Right. So, for example, if a person wants a comfortable life, that's his terminal value, and the instrumental value would be that he will, he would value hard work and be more ambitious in order to achieve his terminal value. Then Rakesh further differentiated terminal and instrumental values into two subcategories, each of self-centered and other-centered. Right, so there are these terminal values and instrumental values again have certain values that are more self-centered, looking towards yourself, and some are more focused towards other. Then he also differentiates between social and personal terminal values and moral and competence instrumental values. So the table out here can make it more clear. So like here you can see there are some set of values under the terminal values: comfortable life, exciting life, sense of accomplishment. So some values are self-centered, means looking up the individual wants for himself, like sense of accomplishment, an exciting life, or a comfortable life. Then some are more oriented towards others, like for example, equality for everyone, peace for everyone, happiness, and so on. Then again, Rakesh has differentiated between personal and social terminal values, and your logic and your competence instrumental values. So you have social values like again wanting peace for everyone, equality for everyone, freedom for everyone, and personal would be family security, inner harmony, and so on. Then the logic would instrumental values could be being more broad minded, then valuing ambition, then valuing independence, and the moral values could be more giving, helpful, honest, and so on. So another psychologist named Shalom Schwartz, he developed another set of values which he organized into a circular model, and the model organizes values into 10 broad categories, each representing several specific values. So like for example, you can look at the circular diagram here, and it is divided into 10 broad categories, broad value categories. And each category, like for example, you have conformity. So conformity again is subdivided into four values, that is politeness, honoring parents, self-discipline, and obedience. So all the 10 categories that you see in the diagram, they again are subcategorized into values. Right. So these categories are further reduced into two bipolar dimensions. One dimension is openness to change and conservation. The other is a self-enhancement and self-transcendence. So looking at the diagram again, you can see this. There are two bipolar dimensions. Bipolar, that is, they are opposite to each other. Like for example, openness to change. So is the opposite of it is conservation, and similarly you have self-transcendence on top, and just opposite to it is self-enhancement. Now, another thing to note in the diagram is that hedonism, which you can see in the dimension openness to change, between openness to change and self-enhancement, the value hedonism is shared by both dimensions. Okay, so openness to change is a value where an individual values independence in thoughts and actions, and is more exploring, more looking more for novelty and challenges in life, and also indulges in pleasure or gratification for oneself. Then just the opposite to it is conservation, a person valuing this would value more of security in terms of job or relationship, more safety, more harmony, more stability of society and relationships, and of self. Then the person is more conforming to rules and regulations and would not indulge in things that would upset or harm others or violate social expectations. So the person in this category would be more following the norms and rules and regulations of the society and of the family, that have been brought down through the generations and through traditions. Then the person is more liable to, is more accepting to the customs and rituals of one's culture or religion. Then the other bipolar dimension is of self enhancement and self transcendence. Self enhancement is valued, again, the person in this category would value hedonism, that is, indulge more in pleasure and gratification for oneself. And again, for self enhancement, the person would value success, achievement of success, demonstrating competence, and would value power, status, prestige, dominance over people and resources. On just the opposite, on the other side, is self transcendence, is more benevolent nature, more giving nature, and such a person would value the welfare of those people who are in close contact with him, as well as the people who are outside the in group. The means the person would value for the protection and welfare of people in the society. Okay, so there are certain organizational values also. We discussed the societal values. Now, looking at the organizational values, organizations also they have certain values, and values in a way give identity to the group. And there are organizations that are known to practice values of high standards and quality, and they have earned this reputation by practicing these values. So organizations also have certain core values, and the core values are your fundamental principles. These are ingrained principles which guide actions and practices in the organization. And the organizations, they want their members, their employees to internalize these core values and follow them in day-to-day activities. Then organizational values have been categorized into four types by Woodcock and Day. So the first one is power, relativism, and reward. That is, some organizations they would value power, maybe through showing their power through rewards, giving high rewards, then showing their power through money or some political association, and they develop a culture of elitism. Then the other organization would value efficiency and work, effectiveness, and economy would be more on their priority list. Then the third type, the organization would value more of equality and fairness and keeping to the law and order of the system would be more valuable to the organization. Then the fourth type is valuing competitiveness and opportunism. That is, the organization. Some organizations they value being ahead of the curve, and they want to grab every coming opportunity in the environment. They are more defensive in their ways, and they want to be ahead of their rivals. These are the four categories in which the organizational values have been proposed by Woodcock and Day. Then another sort of psychologist, Peters and Waterman, They, through their research and their studies, they indicated that certain firms, high performing firms, they possess certain distinct organizational values, like they practice superior quality customer service, then they are more into innovation, they are more into detailing of work and informality of culture. That is, they are not bound by rules and regulations, and they are more informal in their communications, in their system, and they also long for goal accomplishment. They value profit. They are more profit oriented, and they value goal accomplishments. So now we will see what work values are. So what is work value? They are individually held conceptions of what is desirable with respect to the individual's work activity. So it's a conception that is held by individual, what they want with respect to their work activity, or what, uh, how would they, what things would they prefer more in their work, as opposed to the other way of doing it. So work values, they again are expected to be an integral part of the nation's ethos, and the nation, any nation, they would want their people to internalize certain values in them, and they want their people to practice these values and develop these values through socialization or through institutional channels, and make it part of their personality. So like we see different cultures for practicing different values, and that is how nations ethos are developed. So in relation to work, Albert and Vernon did identify they identified six types of work values. First is theoretical. So this is discovery of truth through rational approach. Then economic is, being more useful and practical in your work. Aesthetic is love for beauty, harmony, and form. So individuals who value, who are more artistic, value. They have a sense of aesthetic, and they value beauty and harmony more than others. Then there are some people who value, uh, they find value in serving others, and so these are social values, and they find satisfaction, and this is what they love doing. Then certain people are more oriented towards, they have more political orientations, and this is what they value. Power and influencing others is more valuable to them, than other mode of conduct. Then there are some who have religious values, and they are more into understanding the universe and how it interacts with our daily experiences. So similarly, T.V. Rao, he also studied work values, and but he did it in terms of deriving satisfaction from work. So he said, like, people who do work, which is, which is more compatible with their value system, so then they will find more satisfaction in doing that job, and where they get to practice what they believe in. And he also proposed the following work rules, like creativity and challenge. So some people, they like doing work which is more creative and which is more challenging and stimulating for them. Then some people again value economic, that is, they look for more efficiency and effectiveness in their work. Then independence may be very valuable to some people, and they don't like being closely monitored. Then service, some people like to serve others. Then work conditions, like some people look for facilities in the place where they are working. For example, a proper place to sit, a workstation, computer, and other facilities. Then some people value status and authoritative position, prestige, and the status symbols and so on. Then co-workers, again, this would some people value working with co-workers who enhance their work simultaneously. And then security, some people look for security and safety in their job, and so they like being in places which gives them the sense of security, and these people will not take up challenging jobs, or they don't like to bring too many changes in their work style. An academic is people who value research work and who are more into exploring things, are the academic kind. So, values and individual behavior. Now, personal values guide our decisions to some extent, but this connection is not always as strong as some would like to believe. And there are three conditions that strengthen the linkage between personal values and behavior. First is we are more likely to apply values when we are reminded of them. That is, for example, if we are constantly told that you should be doing charity work and be serving the community, the society, then the person would indulge more in charitable work. Secondly, we tend to apply our values only when we can think of specific reason for doing so. If we don't, if we see that there is no sense in practicing your value, then the individual would not, show it so much unless there is a specific reason for doing so. And thirdly is the environment that discourages and encourages value consistent behavior. So there are certain environment, for example, a person who's more who values innovation would find an environment which stifles innovation and which is more rules bound. So this kind of environment will discourage the person, and the person would be discouraged to show what he values more. Then there are generational values also. Now, looking at the table, now this particular study was taken up by researchers, and they integrated several work values of different cohorts, that is, of different generations in the US workforce. And this study was taken up somewhere in the 1990s, and the table shows employees by era during which they entered the workforce, and the eras also correlate closely with the employee's age. But this a particular study, this analysis also has a certain limitation. So firstly, the framework does not apply across all cultures because this study was undertaken in US, and so it cannot be generalized to all other cultures. Then secondly, there is less research on generational values. And thirdly, there is no evidence that those born in the 1980s or 90s cannot have values similar to those born in other era. So, but despite these limitations, values do change over generations. And looking at this, we can gain some insight from analyzing values this way. So first, as we see the first generation veterans, these people, they entered the workforce in the 50s and mid 60s, and the group was characterized as being loyal to the organization, being hardworking, more conservative in their ways and working styles, and they were conforming to the rules and regulations and loyal to the organization. The next generation, boomers, these people were born after World War II, and they entered the workforce in the mid 60s to the mid 80s. And this generation was placed more emphasis on achievement and material success, and they were more ambitious, and they showed a dislike for authority. So they were not very conforming, like the previous generation was more conforming and more loyal to the organization. This generation showed a less respect for authority, and they worked hard and they wanted to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They were more loyal to their career as opposed to the organization, and they saw the organizations as vehicles for their career. So the terminal values that they enjoyed, that they ranked high, was the sense of accomplishment and social recognition. The next cohort, that is Xers, that is Generation X, entered the workforce in the mid 80s to 2000. And this generation has been shaped by globalization and to working parents and computers. Then this generation values flexibility, and they have a sense of the achievement of job satisfaction. Then they also value family relationships are quite important to them, and but they are also skeptical of authority. They enjoy team oriented work, and they are less willing to make personal sacrifices for the sake of their employer. Then next we have the nexters, also called the Generation Y, also called millennials. They entered the workforce in 2000, and this generation is has high expectations, and they seek meaning in their work. So they want to be engaged in work that is more impactful and which has more meaning. Then their life goals are more oriented towards becoming rich and famous, but they also see themselves as socially responsible. Then they love working with people who are from diverse backgrounds. And this generation is very friendly with the technology, and they're quite familiar with the technology. They take it for granted. They're electronically networked and are very entrepreneurial in nature. They are more casual towards work attire and the communication skills, like they use slang more often. Then they also like to get feedback about how they are performing at work. So there are the values do change over generations, and though this table has this study, this analysis has limitation, but it does give us an idea how about how values differ across generations. Now, values across cultures. Now, values, they are distinctive to an individual, or they also characterize a group or community and the nation, including the nation. So you will find across different cultures, people value different things. So Hofstede, he made an extensive study, and he gave four kinds of value types across different cultures. First is the power distance. The power distance is the extent to which a society accepts that power in institutions and organizations is distributed unequally, right? So uh, that is, power distance culture means like how people view power in their culture. So a low power distance culture does not view uh, people who are in high status or wealth as being, someone who ought to be respected, who ought to be worshipped, who ought to be treated like a god, as compared to a culture which is a high power distance culture. And here people value this unequal distribution of wealth and status, and the people can be seen who are in the lower order can be seen, uh, treating people who are in high status, giving them godlike status, who are in the higher position. So, like for in India, it's a high power distant culture, and here you can see the distinction between the two. Second is individualism and collectivism. So individualism is where people uh, they act as individuals rather than as members of group. So their identity is them, and not they don't want to be identified by their parents or by somebody else. So they like to keep their individual self, as opposed to a culture where collectivism, people value collectivism and they value being associated to the group that they belong to. And collectivism is a tight social framework in which people expect others in groups of which they are a part to look after them and protect them. So, similar again, you will find India as a collectivist culture where the major decisions are taken by people who are higher in the hierarchy, and again, it is not an individualistic culture where individuals can take their own decisions and they can have their own ways. Masculinity versus femininity is another uh, value type which can be seen in different cultures. So, masculinity is where the role of men and women are not seen as equal, and there is a distinct separation of roles. Some roles are kept for men and some for women, and men are seen as dominating the society. So, like in India, it is high on masculinity culture, where certain roles are kept for men and the other roles for women, and women are generally seen as they are seen in a nurturing role, and as opposed to a culture which is high on femininity. Here, the difference between the male and female roles is less, and they are treated as equal. Uncertainty avoidance is now it is the degree to which people in a country they prefer structured over unstructured situations. So a culture which is high on uncertainty avoidance does not like ambiguous situations, and they try to avoid it. So they are more into formulating rules and making a system so that they can avoid any kind of uncertainty, as opposed to a culture which is low on uncertainty avoidance. Here, people are more casual, and they are not into making too many rules. They are less rule oriented, and so and so as it is. So in a way, they take risks and more readily accept change. This is another set of values. It is the long term versus short term orientation. Long term orientation, now people in long term orientation culture, they look to the future and value thrift, tradition, and persistence. And short term orientation, now people in this culture, they accept change more readily and don't see commitments as impediments to change. Now, long term orientation is again here an organization that operates in this kind of environment will they see employees as partners, and they want them to be associated with the organization for a longer period of time, as opposed to the culture where where the orientation is for short term, means the organization will treat their employees um, just they treat them as individuals rather than see them as being associated for a long term. So as long as the employer is giving profits, is result oriented, is beneficial for the organization, he's there. Otherwise, he's no longer with the organization. So there are no long term commitments in a short term oriented culture. Then there's something called value congruence. So value congruence refers to how similar a person's value hierarchy is to the value hierarchy of the organization or a co-worker or another source of comparison, right? So value congruence means that there is compatibility between the two value systems. So there are three types. The first type is person organization value congruence. Now person organization value congruence means the person's values and the organization's values, they are compatible, and there are organizations, they select people based on whether the person would fit the culture that is prevalent in their organization, and is the person seen to have similar values as that of the organization. So person organization is where the values of both are compatible. Then secondly is the espoused and enacted value. That is, if what you desire and what you practice, if there is compatibility, so that is value congruence. Thirdly is third type of value congruence involves the compatibility of an organization's dominant values with the prevailing values of society in which it conducts business. So any business does not operate in isolation. It has an environment, it operates in a society. The organization's dominant values should be in keeping with the society where it is operating. And if it is not in congruence with the values of the society, then the organization sometimes finds itself in a difficult situation. Thank you.